Well, I am finally back from my holiday vacation, but the Carlos Correa Saga continues. There has been no reporting, radio silence on both sides. Is the lack of talk regarding Correa right now a good thing when it comes to a potential agreement? I'll discuss that on the show today. Also, does Correa need the Mets more than they need him? We'll go through that. And finally, the Braves did it again. They signed another ridiculously team-friendly extension. How do they keep doing it? We'll discuss that on today's edition of Locked On Mets.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're watching Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. If you want to find any of my work, follow me on Twitter at FinkelsteinRyan. You can also find some of my writing at justbaseball.com, where I work as the managing editor. Now, I am here back in sunny South Florida after a couple of weeks in miserable Chicago. Love my sister and her family, but boy, is it cold out there, and I am happy to be home. While I was gone, I was still doing shows, obviously, and a lot was happening. You had Adam Ottavino comes back, nice little story there. We had the introductory press conferences, Kodai Senga, Justin Verlander. We're seeing a whole new kind of era of Mets baseball being ushered in, and then Carlos Correa was supposed to be a big part of it. That comes out early in the morning last Wednesday, takes a physical on Thursday, and then I think by Friday we started to hear the reporting about the Mets also raising concern about that leg injury. Now we're sitting here almost a full week later, still nothing. So what does that mean? Is a deal imminent? Are these two sides about to just break things off? I actually believe that the lack of news is a good thing. And all the news that we've heard up to this point, there's the various reporting of Correa wants to get this done, the Mets want to get this done. Come on, obviously, that's why they came to terms on agreement in the first place. The Mets would love to have Carlos Correa as their starting third baseman next year. Carlos Correa would love $300 million plus from the New York Mets. There's obvious motive from both sides to get things done, but it's not that simple right now. But the fact that there isn't a lot going on, the fact that all we've heard is, oh, there's a 55% chance, or today I saw a 51% chance that he signs, 49% chance that he doesn't. But in that same article, the same source apparently said it's going to happen. So if it's a 51% likely to happen, but then it's also going to happen, I mean, what are we supposed to take from that? Honestly, I take nothing from any of it. All I can go off of on this point is there's no reporting that the Twins are making a big push. The Correa camp is opening up the floor to other teams negotiating. It seems right now that these two sides, who have already spoken too early on an agreement previously, as Steve Cohen went to the Post after just signing him on that martini buzz in Hawaii, they're keeping it tight-lipped, and it feels like there's a lot of communication going on. And look, when JD Martinez signed with the Red Sox, people have pointed out that took a week. Correa, let's just say they didn't like his physical, and it began on Thursday. I think it carried over until Friday next week. We're at about a week of timetable, but there was Christmas in the middle there that kind of slowed things down for a couple of days. Also, a lot easier to work on provisions and different clauses in a contract for a 5-year deal on a DH than a 12-year deal on a third baseman. So just because that one took a week, that does not mean this one is going to fall right into that timetable. It could take 2 full weeks. We really don't know. And we're all just sitting here wondering what's going to happen. Bottom line for me, these two sides need each other. The Mets want that big bat to add. Where else are you going to find it? I mean, the alternative now, you're looking at Adam Duvall, AJ Pollock. We've discussed those names. So if that is the only other options that you got other than the trade market, then your best bet is probably just to go back to plan A, which is, yeah, obviously you might want to add one of those guys, but you're just going to be hoping that Brett Beatty can be the answer at third base, and that's a lot to put on a top prospect, but he is a top prospect for a reason. From Correa's camp, you're going to go back into the market again, and the thing is, they're saying that he is not willing to move off of the numbers that have already been put out there, the 12 years, the $315 million. At a certain point, you have to wonder, does he have to bend a little bit? And I've seen people say, 4-year deal, 5-year deal, we love it. Guys, that's not happening. It's not. If he takes that type of a contract, it'll be with the Dodgers. It'll be with another team. Because there's still the fact that, in principle, the Mets agreed to this contract. So, to me, could you knock 2 years off of it? That's kind of more, I think, the realistic possibility here. But I think that it also just comes down to, how motivated are the Mets to get this done? And can Boras be creative enough with that contract that he can get the Mets to assume what is, obviously at this point, a lot of risk? We'll discuss that more in just a minute. But first, today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your number one source for all your sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional amateur league out there. From football to basketball to soccer and esports, they've got it all at BetOnline.net. If you love sports podcasts, you can find those at BetOnline as well. BetOnline is always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting fix. Right on the Mets, plus 700 to win the World Series. How much will that change if Correa is not a Met? Keep all of your tabs there at BetOnline to follow how that line moves. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in the action. BetOnline, where the game starts. Does Carlos Correa need the Mets more than the Mets need Carlos Correa? I think to a certain extent the answer is yes, because if he wants that deal, if he wants $300+ million in the 12 years, I just don't see another team saying, yeah, the Giants, they passed. The Mets, they passed. Let's sign him to a decade-long contract. Who wants to be the third team? The one team that says, we'll overlook whatever this issue is, which obviously we know now is that plate in his leg. I think Correa needs the Mets more than the Mets need Carlos Correa, because I spoke about this, I think it was on the last show I did. If you don't sign him, your alternative is you sign somebody else next year. Your alternative is you got Brett Beatty, who graduated and could be a damn good starting third baseman next year that could improve your lineup significantly. You have Alvarez to improve that lineup. You have Mark Vientos to improve that lineup. But you even have Ronnie Mauricio getting close. The Mets have some top hitting prospects that can raise the ceiling of this team if their floor is the same as last year, which again was a top 5 offense in baseball. I still think that Steve Cohen wants this bad enough that something's going to happen where they will get the deal done. It just might take a lot of time. But if the Mets ultimately say, look, you've put this provision in, we like that, but the one thing that we're still a sticking point on is we don't want to go to 12 years. And if they say, look, we'll still give you 300, but over 10, that AAV climbs up to $30 million, the Mets might not want that, because maybe for luxury tax purposes, they're not interested. But if it gets to that level, where Scott Boras and Carlos Correa won't move off of even $15 million over 12 years, which when you break that down, is less than what, $1.5 million a year? Then it's so unreasonable, maybe by principle alone, you have to walk away. Because again, not to say that a $315 million deal is impossible to happen at this point. It certainly could happen. But there's so much risk baked in there. If the Mets are going to be the team that buys into it and avoids it, then you would think that the Correa side could bend slightly. And again, when I say there's so much risk in it, I don't know the injury. We know the injury. I don't know the extent of an x-ray. I couldn't tell you what the plate says. or what the x-ray says about the plate in his leg and how long it's going to hold up. I can't. And it has not impacted his career up to this point. So with that said, yeah, you can really say, look, this is a bad spot for Correa. What's the big deal? They should just sign him. And I get that school of thought, but this is now two teams that have balked at this. So bottom line, if the Mets sign Correa, it's got to be on their terms of a contract. And again, I'm not saying suddenly it's a 4-year deal. I'm saying if it's a 12-year deal still, well, what is in that contract where if Carlos Correa's leg just does not work after year 7, you're not just saddled with 5 years of Correa on your books where he's trying to battle back and he's the modern-day David Wright at third base. And because of the risk involved, it does make this a little less attractive where the more and more the Boras Correa side refuses to bend on either the total value, the years, or the stipulations that are being put into this contract, the more and more you start to say, is this really worth it? I think ultimately it is. I think ultimately it gets done. But for now, all we can do is just sit back and wait and see what happens. But something that did just happen that we need to discuss. The freaking Braves keep on getting guys to sign ridiculously cheap extensions, and I hate it. I will discuss who's the latest next. Before we get to that, though, today's episode is brought to you by the NHTSA. You're hanging out with some friends, putting back a few drinks, then a few becomes a few too many, and as the evening comes to an end, people start to head out, and you're thinking, maybe I should call for a ride, but then the car's parked right out there, you live nearby, you'll drive safe, and what's the worst thing that can happen? What are the odds you're going to get pulled over? And even so, will your insurance go up maybe a little bit? Could you get your license suspended? Would you lose your job? Suddenly the different fallouts become a little bit more scary to the point of, is it worth it? Is it worth it to potentially total your car or even worse, kill someone? Everyone knows the risks of driving drunk. The results are tragic and often deadly. However, that does not stop everyone from getting behind the wheel while under the influence. And that's why police officers are out there right now looking for impaired drivers on our roads to save lives. So if you think you're okay to drive after a few drinks, think again, play it safe, and plan ahead to get a ride. It only takes one mistake to change your life or someone else's forever. Drive sober or get pulled over. Well, the Atlanta Braves have done it again. Alex Anthopoulos is a genie. I don't know how he does it. He gets these guys sipping the Kool-Aid, and the Braves has signed another all-star player to a ridiculous extension. Sean Murphy, their new catcher, gets a 6-year deal worth $73 million that runs through the 2028 season. There is a club option with no buyout. So, hey, if you want to stick around for one more year, $15 million, and well, not even if you want to. If we want you to stick around for an additional year, we could pick that option up. He'll be making $4 million this year, $9 million next year, then $15 million in the final 4 years of that deal plus that option. They get another guy who has been great in his career to sign. They did the same thing with another Oakland Athletic last year with Matt Olson. Go right back into the well, get their little farm system they got right now going on in California, bring in some players, sign them to cheap deals, and their core is locked up. They got Albies locked up. They got Acuna locked up. Those were the first two. Riley's locked up. Harris is locked up. Spencer Strider's locked up. Now Murphy and Olsen as well. It's frustrating. It really is because they're so well run. You just have to tip your cap. I mean, honestly, I made some jokes on Twitter about it. I'm not serious. I don't think that they put some money under the table for these guys. They're a great organization that wants to win, that leverages control. And why other teams don't leverage control is beyond me. That's why the Mets, as much as they're hammering down this contract with Correa, they should be prioritizing Pete Alonso and Jeff McNeil because there's still 2 years of control left that you can leverage, particularly with Jeff McNeil because he's not going to make some crazy number in arbitration in those final 2 seasons. But what they do is they say, look, we want you here. We want you to be free and easy. Sign this contract and your family will be set for life. It's below market, But if you're Sean Murphy and you play a taxing position and you're 3 full seasons away from free agency, and someone's going to hand you a contract that will allow you to play baseball for the next 6 years and get paid double-digit $1 million for almost every single one of those seasons outside of the current one. Again, it was like 3, 9, and then 15 across the board. You're going to turn that down? Roll the dice on yourself that you can make more in arbitration? I mean, maybe he would have made, if he has that 3, maybe he gets to 6, maybe he gets to 12 in those final 2 years of arbitration. So maybe altogether you're looking at, I don't know, just over $20 million. Now, you ride out the arbitration, you hit free agency, you get Wilson Contreras money, which was like 5 years and 75, or what was it? What was it? I don't even remember. 87.5 million over 5. That's crazy, man. That is absolutely crazy. So let me get this straight. Murphy basically got the same dollar amount, essentially. And that's even with the option. That's factoring in the option. If his option gets extended, it's a similar dollar amount, but they get an additional 2 years. And they get him at a younger age. You got to tip your hat to them. I mean, they're great. They're a well-run organization, and they are just a machine now at these extensions. The only risk that comes with this is, if a Cody Bellinger situation happens where Michael Harris has a great rookie season and 2 years from now he can't hit, and then all of a sudden you say, wow, we have him to how many years now? But even the deals that they have, if the player went sideways, they're so affordable that it almost wouldn't matter. So it's frustrating that as the Mets are sitting here dealing with this saga over $315 million, the Braves can just quietly let out a press release. There's never any leaks. Oh, yeah, we're keeping Sean Murphy for a long time. So anyway, I just wanted to talk about that for a minute. But Correa Watch continues. We'll see what happens if we get a deal by the end of the week. Of course, we'll be discussing that. Make sure you follow, rate, and review wherever you get your podcast. Make sure you follow me on Twitter, @FinkelsteinRyan. Follow the show at Locked On Mets. Thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listen every day. Now, for your second listen, check out Locked On Sports Today, hosted by Peter Bukowski. Locked On Sports Today. So where you want to go to stay today with everything going on around sports. You can follow Locked On Sports Today on the Odyssey app, YouTube, or wherever you get podcasts.